Our first story has been updated by OP recently, so let's read the original story first. So, my boyfriend, 28-year-old male, and I, 26-year-old female, both love to cook and are very good at it. We often make meals together and it's something we really bond over. However, he has a serious issue with cross-contamination that drives me insane. As a result, I feel like I have to constantly keep an eye on him to make sure that he is sanitizing things properly. It frustrates me that I feel like I have to watch him, and it frustrates him whenever I point out something he's done that seems unsanitary. Last Friday evening, we were making carnitas when I noticed that he was using the same knife and cutting board that he had used to chop raw pork, to then chop up onions and radishes. I could literally see red splotches on the cutting board from where the meat had been sitting. I pointed out that whenever I need to cut both meat and produce, that I always do the produce first, so that way I can use the same knife and cutting board without having to worry about cross-contamination. I then told him that we couldn't use the onions and radishes for this dish because I was not about to top my carnitas with them now that they were contaminated with raw pork. He flipped out and kept saying, "It's not like it's chicken." I said, "So what? It's still raw meat and there's still potential for foodborne illness." He wouldn't let it go, so finally I was like, "Fine, I'll eat your tainted frickin' produce," which pissed him off further. He stormed off into our bedroom and refused to finish cooking with me. Without him knowing, I cut up new onions and radishes for garnishing and we ate dinner separately. The next day, we were supposed to go to his parents' place as they were hosting a congratulatory dinner because my boyfriend recently got a new job. In the morning, I faked being ill and hung out in bed watching Netflix and reading most of the day. He seemed baffled by my being sick, and I was like, "I don't know. I mean, I did eat those onions and radishes that you were so pressed about." He looked irritated after that, but he seemed to believe that I was actually sick. When it came time to start getting ready to head out to his parents' house, I said that I was still too ill and ended up staying home. His mother messaged me later on, explaining that it was extremely rude of me to have missed the dinner and that I should have taken some Pepto-Bismol or something so that I could be there to celebrate with them. I didn't even bother responding, and when my boyfriend returned home that night, I could tell he was bummed, but not mad, that I missed the dinner. Multiple people in his family are now pissed because they think I'm an unsupportive girlfriend. I do feel guilty about missing this dinner since it was important to him. But I was also at my wit's end as I've tried to talk about the contamination thing with him nicely many times in the past, but he always gets pissed off about it and then doesn't change his ways. Am I the a-hole? Now, let's read the update. I received quite a few messages regarding this post and figured I would give an update since something incredibly ironic happened anyway. To start, many of you suggested that I purchase color-coded knives and cutting boards and that I have a serious discussion with him about the subject. These are things I have done in the past, but I figured another try wouldn't hurt. I sat down with him and explained that although cross-contamination might not be a big deal to him, that it is to me, and that it would make me feel a lot better if he would please take my feelings into consideration. He promised me that he would be more careful, but then the next afternoon, I saw him put a cutting board away, without washing it, after having chopped raw chicken on it. This obviously bothered me, but I decided not to say anything since we were fresh out of conflict. That same night, I took him out to a nice dinner as a way to make up for missing the one at his parents' house. We had a lovely time and things seemed to be on the mend for a few hours. Later that night, however, he developed really terrible food poisoning, and to make matters worse, he was supposed to start his new job the next morning and ended up calling in sick. He blamed me for it because he thought that the food at the restaurant was what made him ill. I told him that I didn't see how it could have been that because we shared dishes and I was feeling fine. The following day, his mother called and let us know that she had just taken his dad to the hospital. Apparently, he had been feeling super unwell and we all assumed it was related to a chronic disease that he's had for a few years now. He ended up needing multiple blood transfusions and tests found none other than E. coli in his urine. In the days following, my boyfriend continued to miss work, and I discovered that about half the people that attended his celebration dinner the weekend before ended up sick. A bunch of other BS happened with his mother trying to blame me for getting people sick, but I won't even bother going down that rabbit hole at the moment. If you hadn't already guessed, My boyfriend got fired from his job without having worked a single day there. Guess not showing up during your first week isn't a good look. On the bright side, he has shown a sudden and intense interest in kitchen hygiene. Apparently, getting sick himself and having his dad end up in the hospital is what it took. It's been a couple of weeks since this all took place. A lot of you suggested that I break things off, and at this point, I think I may be headed in that direction. Edit: since some of you were wondering, my boyfriend has gotten sick like this more than once, but he usually has other reasons for why he thinks he's not feeling well. Both of his parents have gotten the stomach flu a few times since we've been together. His dad has a blood disease that has progressed over the years, and so this recent bout of illness put him in pretty bad shape. I always thought my boyfriend had a sensitive stomach. We only began living and cooking together about a year ago, and I hadn't realized the severity of his lack of kitchen hygiene until then. Now the top comments. The fact that your boyfriend and his entire family are placing the blame on you? Even though your boyfriend is well aware that it was his fault and his food that caused him to be sick and his father to be hospitalized. Have some self-respect and leave. Dang. It's also pretty concerning that his first impulse when he got sick was to blame her because he thought it was the restaurant. What? Like, if he gets food poisoning from a restaurant, then she's to blame? Because she magically should have known their kitchen cooked like him and picked a different restaurant? This guy can't follow basic hygiene practices, promises he'll change behavior that upsets her, and then can't follow through for even 24 hours, has family that calls to harass her for not attending a meal due to illness, and apparently blames her for things that are out of her control so often it doesn't even register as weird to her? Sounds like a real peach. I think it's clear this entire family is lacking in kitchen and food hygiene knowledge or habits. Also, I'm just curious how his mother blames you for making everyone sick at the meal she prepared that you were not at. They all seem like a lot of work for full-grown adults. Hope he's worth it. I'm usually the designated dessert person. I had made a double batch for 2 cakes the day before his dinner party and before our argument about the carnitas, so that we could bring 1 cake to the dinner and keep 1 at home. So even though I ended up not going, there was still a dish contributed by me. It was a layered sponge cake with strawberry mousse, and she claimed that I must have used moldy strawberries. I know this isn't the case because I literally doubled the batch and then divided everything by 2 for the 2 cakes, and didn't get sick from the one that was kept at home. Also, I definitely would have noticed if there was mold. I think she was just looking for someone to blame other than herself, her husband, or her son. Second story. Today has been rough. I have an 11-month-old and a 10-year-old. I work from home, which means constant interruptions, which I do my best to work around. My partner is currently unemployed because of COVID and is currently doing his utmost to help, but baby is breastfed and clingy, which means I generally end up working with her on the boob. My mother lives a few blocks away and will get someone to let her into our secure complex and then bang violently on the front door. I hate it. It wakes the baby and it scares the crap out of me. I've spoken to her about not coming over uninvited, which she has totally ignored. The reason she comes over so often? Coffee. No joke. My partner was a barista in uni and makes the best coffee in the universe. She waltzes in, asks for coffee, and then leaves afterwards. Just stays long enough to disrupt everything. Usually, we let it go. My mother is a lot. But today was a very bad day. I had a lump in my breast tested a while back, and I found out today that I have cancer. So, I'm sitting on the couch, breastfeeding, crying, and trying to finish my shift while my partner is simultaneously trying to comfort me and leave to go pick up our oldest from school when my mother attacks the door. As he opens it to tell her it's not a good time, she basically pushes her way in and says she has a headache because she hasn't had any decent coffee. I yelled at her. Like, really yelled as loud as I could. Just, get out. Over and over. She called me a dramatic little idiot and left. She is now sending me texts about how selfish and uppity I am. I don't feel like an a-hole, but according to my aunt and mother, I am. Am I? Now the top comments. Not the a-hole. Cut your mother off completely for a while. The last thing you need is her stressing you out. Block her on your phone so that she cannot message you, and tell the concierge that she is not allowed in. If she does knock on your door, do not open it. Call the police if necessary. I am so sorry for what you're going through. We have asked neighbors and management's front desk to not let her in so that she has to contact us before appearing at the front door. I actually suspect that it's an older woman my mother is vaguely friendly with who keeps letting her in. She denies it, but I still reckon it's her. Not the a-hole, you literally have breast cancer? Your mother is entitled and sounds like a nightmare to live with. Obviously, I don't know what she's like beyond this, but you need to tell the security guards in your building not to let her in the future. For full disclosure, she doesn't know I have cancer. I found out today, which is probably why I'm on Reddit. Tomorrow, I'll get back to the reality of my situation. But tonight, I vent. Third story. I went to visit my dad for the weekend, or what was supposed to be for the weekend. Whenever I go somewhere for a short time, I pack enough clothes so I don't have to do laundry till I get home. Saturday, I went fishing with my dad and wore cargo pants. I left a pair of jeans on the bed and they had $70 in the pocket. Well, when we got back, my jeans were gone. After looking around for a while, I asked if my dad had seen them. He said no, and I figured their cat didn't borrow them, so I asked my stepmom. She said she was doing laundry and noticed they were on the bed, so threw them in. I was like, okay, cool, thanks. The money slipped my mind. Well, when I put the jeans on that night when we were going to dinner, I remembered the money and panicked, thinking it went through the wash. All the pockets were empty. So I said, hey, stepmom, didn't I have some money in my pocket? She said, yeah, but you know the rules. When you leave money in your pants, the person washing gets to keep it. That was the rule when I was a kid. I said, yeah, but I didn't ask you to wash them. She said, and you didn't even remember the money till hours later. And I'm irresponsible for leaving pants with money in the pockets laying around. She gave the money back and reminded me to be more responsible. During this whole interaction, I kept looking at my dad who just stood there. So I said, you know what? I think I'm just gonna head home. I left and got back home at 10 p.m. Saturday night. My dad had called and left a message while I was driving and said that stepmom was just trying to be nice and she was reminding me not to leave things laying around, that I didn't need to throw a temper tantrum and leave. My thing is, my jeans were in the guest room, folded on the bed because I wore them driving there Friday. She decided to be nice and wash them, but then chose to withhold my money to teach me a lesson? I wouldn't have left the money there if I didn't feel she was trustworthy, and after that, I just wouldn't have been able to enjoy myself. Am I the a-hole? Now the top comments. Not the a-hole. She stole from you and just giving it back isn't acceptable. Tell your dad you won't be visiting and talking to him until he gets his wife to acknowledge that she wronged you. Spoiler alert, you're gonna be waiting a while. Not the a-hole. She was doing something nice which you didn't ask for. It was nice of her right up until she decided to steal from you. Your dad is a sad excuse for a parent. I would not visit again anytime soon. He's always been like that with women in his life. Once when I was a kid, his girlfriend at the time's daughter always got her way over me. She wanted to sit in my beanbag chair, I had to sit somewhere else. She wanted a page from my coloring book, just let her have it. My mom dropped me off by him one time and had just bought me a Beanie Baby rat thing. He told me I had to share it with her. A different girlfriend didn't like spiders and I was wearing a shirt with a spider on it. He asked if she wanted me to change, because he was actually going to make me. I was under 10 when all that nonsense happened, but it's stuff like that I don't forget. Last story. My brother has never been great with money, and neither was his wife. They recently had their third child and in a 2-bedroom apartment. It's been crazy, so they decided to purchase a home. They have a large dog, and renting is very difficult, almost impossible, with 3 children and a dog, so they've been stuck in that 2-bedroom for 4 years. My brother actually makes a pretty good amount of money, over $100,000, but is terrible at self-control and they usually live paycheck to paycheck. So they saved 20% for a home and got an accepted offer for a duplex, but the bank won't lend to them because of his credit card debt. I don't know exactly how much he said it was, around $40,000, and his bad credit history. My parents aren't able to borrow more money from the bank as they have their own mortgage, and they are now all looking to me to sign for my brother's mortgage. I have an apartment, but it's mostly paid off, so I could help them and maybe the banks would okay them then, but I'm scared my brother will stop paying or be late on his payments and my credit will suffer. I work in an industry that does credit checks for employment, so a bad credit could affect my future job prospects and getting a mortgage myself, as I don't plan on being in my apartment forever. He has begged me and asked our parents to beg me, but I don't trust his self-control when it comes to his money. My mother yelled at me that her grandchildren are all cramped together in a tiny apartment when I could just lend my credit to them and I wouldn't even have to pay anything, but I feel like I'll end up responsible for the debt if it doesn't get paid. Am I the a-hole? Now the top comments. Not the a-hole. Never co-sign for someone unless you can afford to be 100% on the hook for it. And judging by your brother's behavior, you very likely would end up being on the hook for this. His family is cramped and living paycheck to paycheck because of his own poor decisions. And that is not your problem to solve. This is completely within his power to change if he actually wants to. Yeah, I find it wild that he makes that much money and is still living paycheck to paycheck. I know cost of living is very different in different parts of the US, but it feels like he basically has to be throwing it away. And you are absolutely right on co-signing. Mortgages run on an average of 15 to 30 years. Unless you are absolutely sure the other person will keep paying, it's a very risky move to do that. My grandfather co-signed my mortgage, but I also didn't have bad credit due to bad decisions. I just had no credit because I lived at home to save and didn't use credit cards, and he could afford to cover my mortgage if I stopped paying for some reason. Not the a-hole. It's great that they've managed to save up that down payment, but the credit card debt needs to go away first. He and his wife should be making that, plus cleaning up their credit high priority before they even think about buying a house. If they have to ask you or anyone else to co-sign for them, then they're not ready for home ownership. Simple as that.